In this tutorial, we'll look at how to install and manage a slave for Windows Discovery. We can install a slave in 6 easy steps. First, download and run the installer. Next, edit the firewall and add the slave details to the UI. Make sure the slave service is started, and then lastly, check the setup in the UI. So on to step 1. Let's download the installer. Just go to Discovery, Credentials, Windows Slaves, Add, and select the type of slave you wish to install. Now on to step 2. Run the installer. You may need to uninstall older versions of the slave software prior to this step. Be sure to use the uninstaller that's provided. Now run the newly downloaded installer, but make sure you are logged in as the local administrator. Step 3. Edit the firewall. For Windows Firewall, go to Start, Settings, Control Panel, Windows Firewall. Click on the Exception tab, and then again on Add Port. Provide a name and the port number of the slave.
It's 3 o'clock.
And then click OK twice to complete the step. Step 4. Add the slave details to the UI. Go to Discovery, Credentials, Windows Slave, Add, and click on the appropriate Add button for your slave type. If your slave has been installed from an installer that's been downloaded from an appliance, it will automatically attempt to connect itself to that appliance during the installation process. So this step may not be necessary. For a credential slave, provide a name, IP address, take the default port, and click Apply. For an Active Directory slave, provide a name, IP address, and domain, then take the default port and click Apply. Step 5. Check the service. You'll want to double check that the slave service is running. For an AD slave, check that the service is using domain administration credentials. Lastly, we'll check the setup and status on the UI. If the slave status is active, then the slave is connected to the appliance. Now let's look at how to manage a slave from the UI. Removing a slave is a snap. Just go to Discovery, Credentials, Windows Slaves, and select the Delete option from the Actions drop-down menu, as shown here. A slave can be disabled if you want to temporarily stop using it, but don't want to remove its configuration completely. Simply select the Manage option from the Actions drop-down menu, then deselect Enable from the General Details tab and click Apply. The status will report Disabled by User for this slave entry. You can view and apply new slave configurations within the Slave Configuration tab. Please note that slave configuration should only be changed by experienced users or under guidance from support. You can manage logs, logging levels, and disk usage all from the Logging tab. For more information on this topic and many others, please see our online documentation. And for more in-depth, hands-on training and certification, please see the Atrium Discovery Learning Path.